Thank you for the door. And welcome back. We are continuing and switching to cybercrime. Do you know, actually, who does know what happened 10 years ago? A big cybercrime took place, almost to the month. So it was February 2026, 16, sorry, 10 years ago. No? A heist. Which heist happened? Cyber heist. Lazarus, true. What did they try to take? Obviously, bravo! $1 billion heist in the Bangladesh Central Bank. You remember that case? They tried to steal $1 billion, managed to take only 100 million, small change. In the end, even much less than that was actually extradited and laundered. So, and this brought a lot of change about how to trace threat actors and follow the money. If you haven't read the book Traces in the Dark by Andy Greenberg, the one who wrote about Sandworm. You will hear how Chainalysis and other companies actually aided law enforcement in tracing the money of cybercrime, especially crypto assets. And today, our next presenter will talk exactly about following the money of cybercrime and cryptocurrencies. Please give a warm welcome to Matija Kos.
Okay, so you guys are the hardcore group that stays awake at Friday after lunch. So kudos to you too. I had some ideas to talk about the maths and stats behind crypto and some elaborate obfuscation techniques. But don't worry, I've scraped all that. I made some modifications to my presentation to make it as easily digestible as possible and as fun as possible. So chill back, relax, and enjoy the show. So in this session, we'll just try to earn some money. And we will track crypto from criminal act across getting paid all the way to cashing out and buying something in the real world with it. And why? My hope is that I will be able to show you some insights into how crypto is used in cybercrime and to show you some tools that you can use to put an end to these kind of operations. There will always be those cyber criminals that just want to watch the world burn, but in most cases, they are in it for the money, easy money. If you make it harder for them to get paid, you will deter a lot of them from actually doing cybercrime. Okay? So that's the motivation behind the presentation. Just two quick disclaimers. Number one, this is not the only use case of crypto. I have nothing against crypto, and crypto is not inherently bad. And number two is that I hope that this does not come across as a how-to guide to cybercrime. This is just a high-level overview. Okay, so if you follow these steps, you will most likely end up in prison, but still it is a fun story. Okay. What better way to experience all this than to put ourselves in the shoes of a humble ransomware operator who has a childhood dream of buying himself a Lamborghini? Because who didn't have a Lambo poster above their bed as a child, right? I know I did. So in the first part of the presentation, we will see how much does the Lambo cost, and then we will see why we would want to use crypto as a means to get it. After the organizations that didn't ask for our voluntarily done pen test or distributed backup, pay for our services, we will see what kind of obfuscation techniques we can use in order to turn off or discourage forensic analysis. And then we will see what and which methods we can use to turn this dirty crypto into clean crypto and then into fiat currency and buy ourselves a Lambo. So at the end, we'll either buy our dream car or we'll end up in prison. Either way, we'll have some do's and don'ts to tell to the investigators. Okay? So as I already said, objectives. Number one, Lambo, they go for around 280K USD. And of course, we want to have a costume paint job, right? Because who doesn't? That's additional 15 to 20K, so let's round this up to 300K. That's our objective number one. That's why you'll see in the top right corner of the presentation, you will see this tracker of the current funds that we have, okay? So the magic number to look for is 300K up here, USD. And we have another objective, which is as equally as important, I would say even more important than objective number one, and that is to avoid arriving in prison in it, okay? So equally as important. To avoid arriving at prison in it, we will use crypto. And why is crypto used in cybercrime? Because of these 4 attributes. First one is pseudo-anonymity, which means that there is, once the transaction is done on chain, the only attribution between the transaction and the person behind the transaction is the association with the transaction and the wallet address. Okay? So if we are not doxed, there is no association between the person behind the wallet address and that wallet address. Okay? So we are kind of anonymous. If the centralized exchange that required a lot of KYC gets raided by the feds, they can de-anonymize us, and at that moment, all the past transaction and any future transaction that we will make from that wallet will be tracked. Okay? Number 2 is global access, which means that we can be ransomware operator stationed in Russia, and we can do cybercrime against the US, Africa, China, wherever, and they can all pay us our ransom, no matter the jurisdiction. They just have to have an internet access and a wallet address. Number 3 is speed. So the transactions on blockchain settle really quickly, within minutes. So you can make a lot of transactions in a very short period of time. This is specifically a disadvantage for the forensic analysis. And number 4 is irreversibility, which means that once the transaction is verified on chain, once it is done, there is no taking back the money. So there is no central authority like a bank that you can appeal to and say, oh, this was a scam, we didn't mean to make this payment, can you please give us our money back? There is no reversibility in blockchain, okay? So once it's verified, you say bye-bye to it, it's going to my Lambo fund. Okay, let's get to it. So we will join a ransomware group that is already well established. It is high profile, and it works like a business. Okay, they have some big operations, they get big payouts, and we already did our due diligence, so we made a name for ourselves in cybercrime forums. We did some high-profile leaks, we did some ransomware stuff on the side, and we've built our circle of trust. The people from our circle of trust vouched for us to the ransomware group, and we got an interview. When we talk about this kind of stuff, we always have to look at the group that we are joining. So our group is well established. They work as a business, and they have 2 modus operandi that they use. So they either operate as with their core members, or they operate through affiliate program. Okay? So core members are actually the guys that made the crypto, set up the infrastructure, manage it, both the infrastructure and the negotiation portals. And affiliates, on the other hand, just rent out the crypto, do the initial access, deploy the crypto, everything after that is automated. So we split our funds with them. They will receive, for example, for their operation, they will receive 70%, and we will, as an operators, we will receive 30%, or 80-20, or 90-10 split, okay? But our group is smart, and they look at affiliates only as passive income. So they focus on core members, and core members do their own operations. Okay, so this is where the big money is, and this is the group that we want to join. As I said, they are structured like a business, so they have 3 sectors. Sector number 1 is the initial access guys, sector number 2 is red teams, and sector number 3 is negotiators. In the initial access group, we have 3 workers and 1 team lead, and these team leads also do the work, so they are not just the team lead. So we have 3 workers and 1 team lead. In red team, we have 4 workers and 2 team leads because they operate in shifts. And in a negotiator group, we have 2 workers and 1 team lead. As we are doing the interview, they automatically say to us, you will not be able to join negotiators. These guys are pre-selected, but this is a topic for another time. So you are able to join either the initial access group or a red team, okay? And what do you do on the interview? You talk about your skills, right? And you talk about the salary. So the salary for initial access guys is based on the percentage. So they get the percentage of each successful ransom that they are part of. Red teamers get basic salary, so they operate like a business, and they get a percentage, and then all the negotiators are on a salary plus a bonus. So the initial access guys, regular workers, get 8%, and team leads get 10%. Red teamers get, regular workers get 10%, and team lead gets 2K per month. USD in crypto, plus 13% of each successful ransom that they are involved in. And the negotiators are on a 2K salary per month, and they get a bonus. Bonus is, for example, if they make 5 successful negotiations in a row with no less than 20% discount, then they will get, for example, 100K on top of that. Okay? So negotiators are off the table. We can either join initial access guys and red teamers, but we cannot join team leads because we are not seniors yet, right? They do not trust us fully. So we want, of course, to join the group that gets the highest percentage. So that's why we'll join red teaming group that gets, as a regular worker, that gets 10% of each successful ransom that they're involved in. But on top of that, we have some costs that we have to take into consideration. We have a data leak site that uses some bulletproof hoster, and we also have 3 torrent servers, which we use to distribute our data out. These torrent servers are located in Bulgaria, and we have they cost $400 per month, each server. So that's 1.2K per month. You might ask yourself, why do we have to have a good data leak site? Because in current days, the organizations will most of the time restore from backup. But if we have their data that is really sensitive, they will pay us not to leak the data out. And if we cannot leak the data out successfully, we are not a threat to them. Okay, so they will restore from backup. They know that we can't distribute the data out, so they will not pay the ransom. If we want to be scary ransomware operators, we have to have good data leak site. And on top of this 1.2K, we have to add 5 workers that we pay per month. So we have 5 workers times 2K, which is 10K, plus 1.2K, which is 11.2K, and let's round this up to 12K per month. So we didn't even start, and we already lost some funds. But don't worry, we'll make up for it. Our workflow is really quite simple. We work as a regular ransomware group. So our initial access guys will do their own engagement. They have, again, 2 modus operandi. Number 1 is self-made initial access, which they prefer because it is targeted, and it gives them bigger return on investment. So they will do their own social engineering, their own phishing, their own exploits, their own log parsing, and stuff like that. Or they can use subscriptions to different initial access groups, for example, on Telegram, where they pay additionally 130 to 170 USD per month, okay? But, as I already said, they prefer this self-made access. They will create, once they found the initial access, they will create spreadsheets, Word documents, TXT files, whatever, where they will detail what type of access it is and what credentials did they use to achieve this initial access. Then their team lead will talk to our team lead and give him the initial access list. Okay, so there is no interaction between us as red team workers and the initial access guys. Only team leads communicate because we are careful about OPSEC, right? Once our team lead gets the data, he sifts through all the initial access there is, and he creates a priority list. On our priority list, we most of the time have, as number 1 spot, we have financial institutions, then lawyers, and then hospitals. I know what you're about to say. Isn't there a honor among thieves that you do not ransom hospitals? Just take a look at 2-3 years back, and you will see a lot of hospitals actually getting ransomed. Why? Because all these 3 sectors contain very sensitive data about their customers. So if we exfiltrate the data out, we don't even have to encrypt the organization. If we exfiltrate the data out, and for example, if we've exfiltrated the data out of a drug testing hospital, and some businessman was client of that hospital, you know that those clients will push the organization to pay the ransom. Or they will pay the ransom because they're afraid if the data gets out that they will be finished, right? So this is the leverage that we utilize mostly here. That's why hospitals, on top of financial institutions and lawyers, are on our priority list. After we've set the priority list, we do our setup in a network. We do regular pen test engagement. So we do privilege escalation, lateral movement. We deploy the crypto to exfiltrate the data out, leave the ransomware node behind, detailing what steps does the victim have to use to join our negotiation portal, and the most important thing, we leave behind the amount of funds that they have to pay us, okay? So some stats show that 40% of the organizations that got ransomed entered the negotiation chats, and 25% of them actually paid the ransom. Some median value of asking price for the ransom of these institutions is 2 million, okay? So we will ask for 2 million in funds. And let's say our negotiation team is really, really good, and they settled for 1.5 million, and the organization actually paid us 1.5 million. okay, which is 21.78 Bitcoin at the time that I did the presentation. But this is only the beginning. So we got paid, everything is tipped up. You can think we are happy, but there is a long way ahead to reach our Lambo. We create a dedicated wallet per each organization that we ransom, because we are careful about OPSEC and we do not want to compromise the additional operations that we also use. Everything after this part is also heavily automated, but before we start laundering our money, we have to take out certain chunk because we have some fees to pay. We have to take out 20K USD for our boss, of course, for our HR department, our developers, and our bulletproof hosting. And if we combine this 200K plus that 12K that we already have to pay, we will lose 3.8 Bitcoin. So 21.78 Bitcoin minus 3.8 Bitcoin, we will receive 18.7. This 18.7 Bitcoin is the amount that we can split between those initial access workers and us as a red team workers. So we will be entitled to some percentage of this 18.7 Bitcoin. So the main portion of the presentation, obfuscation techniques. This is the animation that shows the flow of cash from specific ransomware group. All the TTPs that I will show here are all real, but they do not belong to a single ransomware group. Okay, so I've made an amalgamation of different TTPs from different ransomware groups and show them here, but they are all real TTPs. So the most common portion, or the most common first step in the money laundering process is to add the funds to a mixer. So mixer or a tumbler is nothing special. It is a service that blends multiple funds, funds from multiple sources together and distributes its own. Okay, so think of it as you add your funds to a pool. Additional 4 users, or 5 or 10 or maybe 1,000 users add their funds to the same pool. It gets mixed like a soup, and then you get your funds back. Okay, so we put in 10 Bitcoin. We will at the end receive 10 Bitcoin minus the fee, but it will not be our Bitcoin, okay? So 2 Bitcoin will be from person X, additional 5 Bitcoin will be from person Y, and so on and so on, okay? So we will receive the same amount, but it will not be our own Bitcoin. There are 2 types of mixers. There are custodial and non-custodial mixers. Custodial mixers are the ones that are centralized, so it's really easy to use them. You just specify the amount that you want to mix, and you specify the wallet or the multiple wallets that you want to receive the funds to, and that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. The problem here is that they require higher fees, and that law enforcement actually prefers to raid these centralized mixers because they require more KYC for the users. Okay. On the other hand, we have non-custodial mixers, which are decentralized mixers, where you have multiple smaller pools, where users add funds to a specific pool. So there is no one centralized spot that the feds or the law enforcement can raid in order to compromise us. Plus, these non-custodial mixers do not require as much KYC, and the fees are lower. The problem here is that if we have multiple smaller pools, there will be a smaller amount of users actually contributing to the pool. Okay, so in custodial mixer, you can have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 users contributing to the same pool. So there is a bigger soup. In non-custodial mixers, you have a smaller pool, and if, God forbid, feds actually raid that smaller pool, it will be easier for them to de-anonymize us because they will have, for example, 5 or 10 users to check. Okay, there is also CoinJoin, which is not a mixer; it's actually a protocol. Which just holds the transaction for a certain period of time, mixes it while the transaction with other transactions while in progress, and then distributes the funds out. So the difference here is that when you use a mixer, you actually lose the access to your funds. So once you add the funds to a pool, you do not have access to them. If the owner of the mixer decides to rug pull, tries to run off with your funds, you cannot do anything about it, okay? You lost your funds. In CoinJoin, as I said, it's not a service, it's a protocol. You never lose access to your funds. If you want to talk about CoinJoin and Wasabi wallet and stuff like that, we can talk about that later on. The thing to note here is, I don't know if you can see the dates and the time of each transaction. On top you can see the amount, but all the dates and time are done in the same second. So this is that speed attribute of cryptocurrencies. Okay, so all the transactions here are done in the same second. After the one set of mixing, we can do additional mixers and so on and so on. Okay, so we've taken care of the left portion of the animation. Now we move on to the right portion, which is peel chain. Peel chain is even simpler than a mixer. It is actually just a process of taking small or peeling out smaller amount of, so we have a big amount of Bitcoin, for example. We take out small amount. We pass on the bigger amount to different wallet. After that, we take even smaller amount of that small amount, pass it on to a different wallet. The remainder goes to a different wallet. Okay, and we can continue to do this indefinitely or as long as we want, as deep as we want, but we have to take into the consideration each transaction requires a fee. Okay, why we would want to use peel chains? Because of these three things. So if the law enforcement is trying to track us and they arrive somewhere here in the middle, it will be really hard for them to track the original source and the destination of the funds if they do not use specific tools or some services like chain analysis and stuff like that. Additional part that why we would want to use peel chains is to avoid anti-money laundering systems. So if we want to convert our funds into fiat currencies, we cannot just go to the centralized exchange and say, okay, we have 18.7 Bitcoin, just turn this into fiat for me. Okay, this will flag this. They will flag this transaction and they will start asking questions. How did you get the funds? Who did you get it from? And so on and so, which can lead into an investigation. But if we make multiple smaller transactions from multiple different wallets, we can potentially avoid these anti-money laundering systems. Additionally, there is something known as cross-border laundering, which means that we would ideally use wallets located in different countries around the world or services around the world, okay? So that if they want to track us, they will have to do the multinational collaboration in order to put an end to our operation, okay? Again, a lot of these transactions are done in split second from each other. So from the mixer, all the transactions go in. It takes some time to mix them. After the mixer, you can do the peel chain in a matter of 10 minutes maybe. Okay, so everything here is really, really automated. So we've taken care of the left portion, the right portion now, and you see there is another slide here, but there is nothing from the animation there at the end. This abrupt stop means that we've jumped chains. Okay, so we converted our Bitcoin to a different cryptocurrency using something known as cross-chain bridges. Okay, cross-chain bridges are just a service or a swap service that turns one cryptocurrency into another one. So we started with Bitcoin on Bitcoin blockchain. Then we used something known as a Uniswap, which converted our Bitcoin into wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum network, for example. Then we used PancakeSwap, which turned it to Binance Smart Chain, which is higher volume chain. And then we use something known as Uniswap, which then turned that into USDT on Tron. USDT is a cryptocurrency that is preferred by the cybercriminals for cashing out because it has really, really low fees and it has a high liquidity pool, let's say it like that. We can either do it manually, as you saw on the previous picture, or we can use third-party service. This is the example or the workflow of the service that was promoted on one of these hacking forums, where the users, us as the users, we would send our dirty crypto that we have to a centralized service, which will then sell our dirty funds to normal users. They will receive cash. They will use this cash to buy additional cryptocurrency on, for example, Binance. Then they will receive this clean crypto, take their fee, and send us the remainder. Okay? Everything here is super easy to do for us, but the big problem here is trust. Right? We have to trust these guys here that they are not going to run off with our funds or that they are not actual law enforcement. So we've done everything as a group. So we did our mixing, we did our peel chains, we did some cross-chain bridges, and we have to now pay some fees, right? So we will lose 2.7 Bitcoin for all these fees. Some stats show that good cybercriminals will lose 10% of their funds for these obfuscation techniques and this obfuscation process. Okay, so we lost 2.7 Bitcoin. We are left with 16 Bitcoin, and this is the amount now that we can split to our workers, including us as a red teamer. Okay, so we, if you remember from the beginning, we are entitled to 10% of these funds. So we will get 1.6 Bitcoin on top. So this is now our funds that we have at our disposal. What we want to do and what we should do as a criminal is then do our own set of obfuscation techniques. Okay, so we will do mixing portion again, peeling portion again, cross-chain bridges and stuff like that. If we do not want to end up in prison. If we want to end up in prison, we will just cash out immediately. But we are smart. So we will lose additional 0.14 Bitcoin to do our own personal obfuscation techniques. Okay? After we've done that, we will have 1.46 Bitcoin, and we can decide what we want to do with it. We can either put it in a savings fund, okay? And if we decide to go this route, we would want to turn this Bitcoin into something known as privacy coins. The big three are Monero, Litecoin, and Zcash. Monero is definitely the king here. So privacy coins are called privacy coins because only the sender and the receiver know that the transaction took place. Okay, there is no chain level traceability. So the animation that we saw a couple slides back, that cannot be done, for example, on Monero blockchain, because there is no tool that can allow the law enforcement to actually see this trace. Okay, and that's because they have a private ledgers. So most of the time, privacy coins are used for long holding of the currency and something known as OTC cash out. We will see, and we will talk about this OTC cash out later on. Why we would not want to use privacy coins? Because they immediately raise a lot of suspicion. Big centralized exchanges have mostly stopped converting or actually accepting privacy coins because they immediately associate it with criminal activity. It is not the only use case, for example, of Monero. It is a privacy coin. Privacy can be either good and bad. But most of the time, centralized exchanges have immediately started flagging and not supporting actual transactions with privacy coins. So if we want to save our funds, we would put it into privacy coins and then convert it again afterwards when we are ready to cash out to something else. Okay? But we do not want to turn our funds into savings account because we want to buy ourselves a Lambo. So we have to actually cash out, and we have to turn it into fiat currencies because we cannot just go to the car dealership and bring 2 bags of cash, right? Or we can do that, but we would not want to do that, okay? And we most definitely cannot just go there and say, oh, I have a crypto wallet on this small USB, just trust me, bro, and give me my Lambo, okay? So we have to turn it into real money. To do so, we can use something known as centralized exchanges, which are really good because they have a high liquidity pool, which means that they actually have, in this case, 100K USD to give us. Some smaller centralized exchanges do not have as big of a liquidity pool, and they have maybe 10K or 20K at their disposal at any time. So we want to use some big centralized exchange to get our funds out. How would we approach this? We would definitely not use real KYC, right? Because all the centralized exchanges are heavily monitored by the law enforcement, and they have to comply with the regulations of the country that they are in. So that's why we would want to use fake KYC and use some low volume offshore centralized exchanges. And again, to avoid being detected by those anti-money laundering systems, we would use something known as micro withdrawals, which is just taking out a smaller amount, right? As to why not use them, again, heavily monitored, potentially honeypots, or potentially controlled by law enforcement. The thing that we can use is something known as a peer-to-peer platform. Peer-to-peer platform is just a meeting ground where buyers and sellers meet, regular people like you and me. So this, for example, one of those peer-to-peer exchanges is known as BISC. We would go to that platform. I will say that I am selling 1.46 Bitcoin. Someone will say I have, for example, 100K. Do you want to do the exchange? Okay. If we say yes, we will then agree to use a different form of communication. For example, session, Telegram, God forbid, Discord, right? To talk and to arrange the details of our transaction. When we are talking on session, we will say, okay, I will send you the funds to this account. You will give me, for example, you will pay to my Revolut, or you will buy gift cards for me, or you will use PayPal or whatever, okay? The problem here is that, I don't know about you, but I am not walking around with 100K in my pocket. So if we want to convert a large amount of funds into fiat currency, we will not use peer-to-peer platforms, because on the other side, it's regular people, okay? So these peer-to-peer platforms are mostly used for smaller transactions up to 10K, okay? And why are they harder to and tricky to trace? Because the communication between actual buyers and sellers is done on different platforms, and each transaction is it has inconsistent identifiers. So for example, once we will use session and we will say, okay, give me my funds to Revolut. Other time we will use Telegram and we will say, okay, give me my funds in the form of a PayPal transfer, okay? So it's really hard for the law enforcement to put an end to these operations. On top of that, after the transaction is done, we can delete our account and our wallet, both in our actual wallet and the address that we have on, for example, BISC. Okay, so we can purge everything after each transaction. Again, we will not use this transaction because we have 1.46 Bitcoin, which is 100K. Okay, we cannot just go to a single platform and say to someone, random person, can you give me my 100K? Okay, we will use something known as OTC broker or over-the-counter broker. This is the communication that I found on, or the service that I found advertised on specific hacking forums, where he calls himself a pen tester. He said, hi, I saw your profile on this forum, and I just received a payout from a pen test job, yeah, right? And I don't know what's the best way to convert it in Russia, okay? And then the OTC broker responded like this. He said, hello, we do card transfers from 400 and up. We do courier delivery from 30K up, and we do think of QR code, which is some Russian thing, I will not bore you with it, from 5K up. Each transaction requires specific fees, okay? As we have, as I said, 100K, we will opt in to use courier delivery because we have more than 30K, right? And on top of that, courier delivery has the lowest fee, right? And our funds are dirty, so we will lose 4.8 Bitcoin for this. After that, he says, you pay first. Once the funds are fully received, I place the order and we arrange the location and time, okay? Delivery takes 2 to 5 hours, maybe longer if couriers are overloaded. So now our warning lights start to appear, right? Okay, he will not go there by himself. He will send a courier, okay? We will have to meet up in person. Then he says pickup is secured by a token, which means that we will, before we, or after we make the initial transaction, we will take a picture of a banknote, so real life banknote, showing the serial number. We will send that picture to him. Once we meet in real life, we will show the same banknote showing the same serial number, and this will verify to him that we are the actual buyer that sent the funds in the first place. So he says, you send me a photo of the bill and bring it to the meeting to prove you are the recipient. And he said, what say you? We are in. Okay, so we are in, but we are smart. If he uses couriers, we will use someone else, right? Because we do not know if that guy is actually police officer, right? Or if he is some strong big guy who will beat us up and just take our money. So we will pay up to some low-level thug. We will give him 5K to go there instead of us. But we are smarter even more because we will pay additional 5K to a different guy to beat up the first guy if he decides to run off with our funds, okay? So we've covered all our exits. So we will lose 2 times 5K, which is 10K, and then we will lose additional 6.8% of that for the courier delivery fee to the OTC broker. So we will receive our initial 100K, but we will lose 16.8K to that. After that, we are left with 83.2K of real-world cash. So we have it. It's in our office, wherever. Okay, we have it on our desk. We have to do that 4 more times, all this process, we have to do 4 more times to reach our magic number of 300K. Okay, so let's say that we did all that and that we've managed to not get caught. So we have on our disposal in our office, we have 300K. But the thing doesn't stop there, because we cannot then just take these funds, go to a car dealership, put them on a front desk and say, give me my Lambo, right? They will start asking questions. How do you have such enormous amount of cash on your person, right? So we have to legalize our funds. Do not take my word for it. This is the advice given by Logbit Sup, so the owner of Logbit ransomware group, where he says, well, and perhaps the most important, long and nasty thing, legalization. For law enforcement agencies of any country, all sources of your income must be clear and transparent. Everyone must know where your money comes from and that it's legal. As soon as you start spending unlegalized money, you stick your ears out of the crowd, machine translation, so whatever ears out of the crowd means, which means you can be taken into development investigation. Personally, I like the restaurant business. Many people pay in cash or can supposedly pay in cash, and thanks to this, you can safely launder sufficient amounts of money. But legitimate business is not the only way to legalize our funds. These are some of the examples that criminals like to use. So while they were so popular, they heavily used NFTs. Quite morbidly, they will also use death of a family member, where they will say, okay, my grandpa died, and he left me a big set of money, or he left something buried in the backyard, right? They will also say that they won in an online casino, but casinos have started to pick up on this, so they are also part of the investigations when the law enforcement does this. They can invest to some real estate in Middle East specifically. So Middle East is the place where they actually launder a lot of money, and they can always hide behind some legitimate business. Okay, once we, for example, used our legitimate business to launder all these funds to make it actually legalized, we got it. Congratulations. Feast your eyes, feast your eyes. Okay, so we bought our dream car, we done everything right, but do not get your hopes up. Inevitably, we will end up in prison because, as you've seen, there are a lot of steps that can go wrong and probably at some time will go wrong. And I don't know of any hacker that has 50 plus that hasn't been investigated or is not in problems, right? Some do's and don'ts for the investigators. If you will be tasked sometime to do the investigation on crypto and money laundering, you should establish your ground truth early, which means that you should be in constant communication with the organization that was ransomed. They should show you their ransomware notes so that you know which group ransomed them, because potentially, I hope that you have your own database where you track their TTPs of the specific group. Also, they will have to tell you how much funds do they plan to actually pay up for the ransom. Because then you can say, okay, we have past experiences that these specific ransomware groups will go to 50% discount maybe. So do not say that you will all, immediately in the first step, you will give them 75%, because it's not smart to do that, right? Also, you should track structure, not just the value. So you should have a mental picture, and now you know how mixers look. You know how peel chains look, so just look for those patterns. Do not just look, okay, 1 Bitcoin went here, 2 Bitcoins went there, something happened like that. Okay, so take a big look, take a bigger perspective, look at the patterns that they use, and of course use some on-chain tools, depending on your current budget that you have. But remember, no tool is perfect across chains, which means once the threat actor used cross-chain bridge or switched from the, for example, Bitcoin blockchain, you have to use a different tool which allows you to track those funds. Okay, that's it for me. Do you guys have any questions?
What's the color of your Lambo?
Sorry?
What's the color of your Lambo?
I'm not at the liberty to say.
Yeah, any other questions? Actually, I read somewhere that like over 50 billion of crypto assets, different cryptocurrencies, are basically just sitting there, waiting to be cashed out. Nobody's cashing out. Why? This is so easy. Why don't they cash out? Come on, really.
I don't know. Uh, the problem here is that cyber criminals are not as... once you've done the cybercrime, you've done all the technical parts that you are able to do because you're a nerdy guy. You've done everything. After that, you have to think more politically. You have to go into the mind of someone that you do not know. So what would the law enforcement look for? You have to put trust into someone else. And us as IT guys or tech guys are not as trusty to someone that we do not know, right? So on top of that, most transactions or most big organizations, they have dedicated SOC teams and dedicated investigators and dedicated tools. So once they pay the ransom, even if they do pay the ransom, you know that they will previously inform the actual law enforcement. So from the moment that they make the payment, that crypto is immediately getting tracked, right? So the law enforcement will know to the exact wallet before even the transaction is made, to the exact wallet that they will make the transaction to, okay? So that's a big problem, and I'm talking from stuff that I saw. The law enforcement is quite vocal about that. So once the transaction is made, they will, through specific channels, actually talk to the ransomware operators, and they will just say, okay, we know about this transaction, be careful, okay? So at that moment, cyber criminals, if they are not really, if they don't care about their life, they will proceed on. But in most cases, they will just stop because money laundering brings a hefty, hefty fine. Okay, so they will either get 20, 30 years in prison for just one operation. So when I said we do this 4 times, that's really, that's really pushing the limits here because it's really, really hard to do.
How much of them are the state actors and how much of them are...
Well, I would like to tell you the numbers, but everything that I show here is your petty, smaller cyber criminals, right? For the state actors, as already mentioned, like Lazarus and stuff like that, they have different modus operandi that they use, but I will not go into that because they have their own TTPs, which is quite more elaborate to show here.
And I don't think they are afraid of
There are some guys that say, okay, you know that, for example, Russia has a policy to, if you are not attacking Russian or former SSR states, you will not be prosecuted for the stuff that you do. But comes with a big but, right? There have been some operations where then the threat actors actually played a bit too much, and they got even arrested in Russia. So it all depends on the state and where you work. I mean, how would you prosecute someone in North Korea? I mean, if you can go through the border, congrats.
Yeah, and bear in mind that if you go, in some country, let's call it Neverland, you cannot just, you want real cash there. You cannot withdraw $1 billion from that country by just, shifting cryptocurrency in that country. You will bankrupt that country eventually if they don't have, ability to, do business on like international exchange. So it's, for North Korea or whatever, they are not part of the normal financial, money flows. So I think maybe that's part of the reason why they cannot just, they have to import this money somehow into the country.
And the most cyber criminals actually never go through the process of actually converting crypto into something real. Most of the time they will stick with crypto and then buy something that accepts crypto. So some services that accept crypto, they will never go to fiat. Okay, so that's also, if, for example, you can pay specific VPNs you can buy with crypto, you can use some online services that you can buy with crypto. So they will spend their funds that way. But that's, again, 100K for them is once in a lifetime achievement.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to give you the mic.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
For how much honesty can you hope when you're dealing with a client that's being, let's say, extorted or threatened? Like how honest they are with you and what they do and how much they listen to you, to your advice.
The problem here is that a lot of organizations will actually not disclose that they were ransomed and that they paid the ransom. If they can help it, they will not say this. They have some agreement that they will do, but most of the times current regulations have started to put an end to this because they say, okay, you have 4 days to disclose that you were to a specific authority, that you were ransomed. So in that case, the cat is already out of the bag and they have to tell you what happened, and they will, in that case, they will tell you. But if there is no big headline, for example, in the news, or they think that the law enforcement didn't catch on to them, they most of the time will not tell. But those, again, those are the small organizations. The big organizations have a lot of regulations to adhere to in order to continue working on. If they mess up even once, for example, if our big organization didn't disclose, and later on we found out that they didn't disclose, it's a bigger damage to not disclose at the beginning than to be found out not to tell the truth later on.
Yeah, and bear in mind that some countries have a law against paying ransoms.
Yes.
And this is not new. This is not because of crypto, but this is because of general crime that, like 50 years ago, I think Italy was one of the first one that had kind of laws where you are not by law permitted to pay any kind of ransom if you are extorted because of, the problems they had with organized crime.
And if you pay the ransom, you're actually positively motivating them to continue doing the crime, right? So if they know that your country doesn't allow you to pay the ransom, they will most likely probably not target you, right?
Okay.
What are some of the techniques Right. So what are some of the techniques that cyber criminals use to cover their track during the operation, the hacking part? You talked about the obfuscation during the crypto and everything, but what about the hacking? What type of techniques, tools?
So the cyber criminals here, so we are not talking about state level guys, the guys that do 0 days, 1 days, POCs and stuff like that. So we are talking about low level criminals. Most of the time they will either use some phishing campaigns to gain initial access, or they will parse already existing stealer logs, right? That's their most common initial vector in. The thing that I saw is they boast like they did some big hacking stuff, but most of the time they just did IDOR or something like that. So they exfiltrate the data out. That's not necessarily as important. Keep in mind, the lot of low-level criminals will just pull down, for example, HR department or marketing department data out, so nothing critical. They will package it up. They will fill it even more. To say, okay, we have 200 gigs of your data. So in that case, you did not get fully compromised, and they did not have to do a lot of lateral movement or privilege escalation during the actual engagement. So cybercrime, like low-level criminals, are all over the place. So you never know where they will strike and how much actual damage did they actually make.
Okay, last question over there.
Is there something else between like Tor relays and because like everybody now knows that Tor isn't that anonymous right now, so
I didn't talk about this, but if we are a good ransomware group, so we will use our wallets, and for example, our Wasabi wallet and stuff like that, we will use in a virtual machine that has specifically exit to Tor. So, for example, we will use that Tor in that case, but if VPN is even sufficient for that. If we are not a big fish. If we are a big fish, then the law enforcement will do whatever they do to track us down. But if we are a smaller fish, Tor is perfectly fine. The problem there is that you have to be okay with the stuff that you will wait a long time for the exfiltration of the data out, for the actual transaction made, and everything on Tor. If you want to automate stuff, it's harder to do it on Tor network than in real classical internet. But Tor for smaller criminals is quite okay.
Matija, thank you for a great lecture.
Thank you.
Now we have 7-minute break, but be back. We still have 2 lectures to go today. The one next will be about honeypots, and then we return to cybercrime.